What's up, everybody? How are you? Welcome to Africa Development Journal, the show that is the premier audiovisual journal of Africa's development journey. This week's episode of 8J is a journey through the coffee sector, quite literally, and I can feel the aroma already. Jambo, I'm Juma Majanga. Now, with over 2.2 billion cups of coffee being consumed daily worldwide, coffee is one of the most traded commodities in East Africa and a major cash crop in the region. But how profitable is coffee farming in East Africa? What are the challenges facing the coffee sector in this region? And what are the opportunities in this sector? Well, as Kenya was hosting the 2019 International Coffee Conference in Nairobi, my colleague reporter, David Owino, sat with different stakeholders in this sector, seeking answers to these questions and filed the following report.
Coffee. Despite its caffeine content, it can actually cause depression. Well, global market trends have proved that. Coffee farmers in Kenya understand too well the heartbreaks of a crop that demands so much effort and resources, and yet for a long time returned very little in income. It was not always like that. In the 70s and 80s, coffee was green gold. In fact, for over a decade after the period of 1989, global prices increased annually by up to 75%, driven by a tightly controlled supply by the International Coffee Organization.
Prices of any commodity are a function of demand and supply. If you can manage to tame oversupply by sometimes having to offload large quantities of coffee at a particular time from the market, then you actually stabilize those markets, those prices upwards. And this is precisely how the International Coffee Agreement used to work.
By allocating monetary export quotas to member countries that produced 90% of world's coffee then, the International Coffee Agreement effectively created a safe space for small producers like Kenya. Stable prices and assured market until its collapse in 1989.
Today, in the absence of that, each country is forced to operate in relations with their own marketers, and some of those relationships we have doubts and reason to believe that they are not working very well for the smallholder farmers. So in a way, the collapse of the International Coffee Agreement brought a minus in terms of giving space for the smaller producers of coffee.
The story of coffee in Kenya has never been the same again since then. We visit the farm of Joseph Kimani Waithaka, who was brought up by coffee farming parents, worked as a researcher for over 40 years at the Coffee Research Foundation, and today is a coffee farmer. The rise and fall of coffee sector in Kenya is to him a lived experience.
One, the weather was favorable. Two, the national economy was stable. The international coffee prices were also stable. During that, those decades, from 60s to 90s, there was less incidents of corruption in the coffee industry.
Coffee is today one of the world's most traded commodities, earning up to $200 billion in 2017 alone. The paradox, however, is that the current average green bean export value is just less than 10% of that $200 billion pie. What that means is that while international traders are making big profits from coffee, the farmers that labor to produce the beans are living in poverty. And now, a coffee startup in Nairobi, working with farmers like Joseph, is seeking to change the coffee narrative in the country.
The most coffee buyers and coffee roasters want to buy good quality coffee. But at that time, the coffee farmers or the cooperative people doesn't know how to make good quality coffee. So I was thinking, if I help them improve their quality and quantity, we can find the buyers or the clients out of country.
They organized for our soil samples to be taken. And the analysis and report they gave us is assisting us to rectify the soil pH. Now we can say my farm requires more of this and less of this.
Having worked for Korean coffee giant CJ for over a decade, Chris Wang was looking for a different kind of a challenge, that of creating his distinct cup from scratch. He decided to venture into specialty coffee in a country from where he had bought green beans regularly for his former employer.
I met one of guy in Kenya Coffee Research Foundation. 2015, I support him the first time. And then we monitoring together how to improve. So after that, we got the positive result. They of course increased 20% of the coffee yields and coffee quality. And end of the years, I purchased his coffee above market price.
You realize if you're able to work with specific farmers, you're able to control key processes. And for coffee, what makes it complex is the quality at the end of the day. So if you're able to track and control the processes at key stages, this ultimately defines your cup at the final consumption level.
According to Specialty Coffee Association of America, beans that score 80 and above on a scale of 100 are graded as specialty. The condition of each grain counts in creating the sort of taste that discerning consumers world over are craving. Specialty coffee has been in existence since the mid-70s and has grown steadily, accounting for 30% of the sector's annual value, an equivalent of $60 billion by 2017. The idea behind this subsector is fairly distributed responsibility and revenue along the life cycle of a coffee bean. Every person involved in each stage of the coffee value chain maintains a keen focus on standards and excellence, ensuring that the end product is beans of best flavor.
Some of these inputs, like manure, fertilizers, protection, will greatly improve the coffee quality the farmer produces. This quality is the one which is supposed to determine the price.
Incentivized by higher pay per kilo of green beans, the farmers put in more work, following through strict standards for each step of production. Connect Coffee Roasters and the farmers in their pilot project already have their eyes fixed on the niche markets and the kind of buyers that will buy the right amount at the right price to keep everyone happy along the value chain.
You find that countries like Republic of Korea, the consumer is willing to pay even more than $7 for a cup of coffee against $4 for his or her lunch. So these are markets that are very reliable, informed by the economics in terms of income and also lifestyle. And these are our main target entry or target markets.
The most Kenyan people drink milk tea, like a chai. Yeah. But when the young generation went to outside, they bring the coffee culture also. So now the Kenya consumer increasing maybe 20%, 30%. But after 5 years, 10 years, I'm sure every Kenyan people drink coffee in the morning.
While specialty coffee pays more, or as they put it, above market rates, it is priced against regular market rates and therefore not protected from the volatility of the global market. Furthermore, pricing of specialty coffee is privately negotiated with the farmers. This opaque arrangement may not exactly be ethical.
The best actually is a situation where a smallholder farmer knows of a very minimum price that they can be able to sell their coffee when the season starts, because then you can be able to plant, you can be able to make business decisions. Unfortunately, in Kenya today, no farmer can be able to tell you with precision how much they're looking forward to selling their coffee.
Kenya has the potential to be a leader in the specialty coffee market, which has the enormous advantage of receiving higher prices and being, to a large extent, insulated from the mainstream market for commodity coffee. However, quality in itself is not sufficient to achieve success. It must be supported by a long-term marketing strategy to reach both buyers and consumers. Establishing such a strategy is only one of the many challenges that must be addressed by the Coffee Subsector Implementation Committee. We must work simultaneously on many different fronts, including increasing productivity, streamlining the value chain in order to reduce the number of middlemen, stimulating consumption in coffee-producing countries, improving infrastructure and logistics, finding ways to mitigate and adapt to climate change, incorporating young people into coffee production, and bridging the gender gap.
We have seen coffee in all of its processes, from the farm to roasting and even extraction, being treated with a reverence of fine wine and craft beer. And that's in the DNA of specialty coffee. All this is very interesting, but even more interesting is a growing prospect of Kenya's coffee sector. One farmer at a time, one cup at a time.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
How is your coffee?
It's great. I'll have another Chemex.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
In a few minutes.
All right.
Well, from the look of it, David really enjoyed doing this show. Look, he's having extra cup of Chemex. Well, I'm having none yet, but he'll have to sort me out after the show. Anyway, that's where we wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for your valued company, and do join me next time in another exciting episode of Africa Development Journal. As we say here, keep creating, keep innovating, and keep developing. Until next time, I'm Juma Majanga. So long.